Planet, coming to you with another video. Let's get into it, Israel.
Historical mythology of the Anunnaki and the Igigi. The exploration of Mesopotamian mythology includes two frequently found terms, Anunnaki and Igigi. They're also found in earlier tales of deities from Sumer and Babylon. The literature that surrounds these two words usually comes in the form of Sumerian glyphs, rather than the more intricate Babylonian writing. The diverse range of mentions of Anunnaki from various sources caused some trouble for historians, who diligently try to figure out exactly who they were. The general idea is that they and the Igigi were considered gods in ancient Sumer and Akkad. There's a wonderful enigmatic historical prose titled The Descent of Inanna to the Netherworld, which mentions the Anunnaki in rather dark terms. As the name of the tale may suggest, the deities who ruled that dark and violent world were associated with unpleasant things. The story itself follows Ereshkigal, who gets the Anunnaki to remove her sister. Although mostly mentioned as deities, these beings have also been described as wise men, regulators, sages, or even miners who work in the underworld. Therein lies the mystery for the baffled scholars. They've relegated all this material to the realm of gods and mythology, even though the Sumerians wrote it in a specific historical account. Just because we call it mythology because it makes us more comfortable means just that. The Anunnaki were spoken about as if they were very real, not some apparition or elusive deities. The multifaceted descriptors only add to the mystery surrounding the Anunnaki's true purpose and identity. Other legends from those ancient cultures indicate that these beings frequently got involved with arguments or battles between themselves. Sometimes they also aligned themselves with human rulers in order to either support the people in some battle or special situation, or to get support from the people themselves. Anunnaki were mentioned quite a lot in the ancient texts. They seem to be quite a bit more popular or commonplace than the Igigi. This term refers to a certain group of Anunnaki who were specifically spoken of in the now famous Enuma Elish tales. According to details found in the various legends, there were 300 Igigi, and they all lived in the Mesopotamian equivalent to heaven instead of the netherworld. Like the tales in which the Anunnaki interacted with people or sought out their support for a while, the special group of Igigi did this as well. One such story that indicated their descent from heaven to interact with people involved the marriage of Marduk to Sarpanit. Whatever the specific beliefs about these true groups of holy beings, they seem to exist across cultural lines for quite a long period of time in the ancient world. Researchers with interest in multiple cultures have found quite a lot of similarities between the Sumerian and Babylonian Anunnaki and the Nephilim as described in the Judeo-Christian histories. One etymological indication of the similarities comes from the Hebrew root of NFL, as seen in the Nephilim word. This root sound represents the action of descending or falling from somewhere higher up. If the Nephilim were beings who descended, the Anunnaki name also indicates the same idea. The root An means heaven or sky, and the root Ki indicates land or earth. Their name therefore simply means from sky to land, which is extremely like falling or descending. This has led some people to believe that the Nephilim are Anunnaki. They believe the terms are synonymous and just come from two different cultures. However, closer inspection of the historical documents and writings indicate that the Anunnaki is a term to describe all these beings, with the Nephilim only a part of the whole. In fact, the Nephilim are more closely related to the Igigi, as there were fewer and they all seem to exist up in heaven rather than down in the netherworld. Although the root words seem to indicate this type of relationship between the two groups, there are no true links describing the exact origin of Anunnaki as a word itself. The people who study these kinds of things in the modern world use what they know of the ancient languages and the mythology surrounding these deities to formulate appropriate ideas. From a scholarly perspective, Anunnaki seems to indicate the sons or heirs of Anu, who was the main Sumerian god, instead of a concept of heaven to earth descent. Other suggestions include the word Anuna, which means noble and fear, or Danuna, which refers to all the gods in heaven and the netherworld. In all these instances, the key part of Anunnaki seriously gets ignored. Different translations and configurations of the name abound. Variations between the various word parts and their meanings do not always hold up to additional scrutiny. For example, if Anunnaki was some mistaken form of Anuna, why were both terms in use at the same time? Equally perplexing language issues surround the Igigi. In Sumer, the word part seems to indicate eyes, a face, surrounding, or a young man. Do these designated gods represent youth, or are they deities who surround or besiege in battle? As there's some indication that repeating syllables pluralize the words in these ancient languages, Igigi could simply indicate a pair of eyes gazing down at the people below on earth. The symbol of a pair of eyes, which seemed to align with the concept that the Igigi looked down at humanity and watched them, matches the biblical description of the Nephilim as the Watchers. This seems to indicate that all the spiritual beings throughout the various civilizations had very close ties to each other. The conversation and continuing research about the language and meaning behind these two pervasive terms makes for an interesting academic discussion. More researchers come up with ideas that may fit in with current knowledge about the Mesopotamians and Sumerians, but there's really no way of knowing exactly what these words mean. The key issue is, if the Nephilim or Watchers are the same or closely related, then our reading material on the mysterious Sumerians is vastly extended, specifically into the Book of Enoch. The myth of Etana and the plant of birth. There are so many historical mythological accounts to choose from. For the purpose of narrative, discussion, and insight, it would take forever to go through them all. However, the myth of Etana stands out. We see a direct connection between earthly people and these gods, as if a real event has taken place. Not a story, not a legend, a real historical account. Cylindrical seals dated around 2300 to 2279 BCE show the origins of this myth that come out of Sumer in truly ancient times. The myth of Etana involves the king of Kish and his journey to visit the gods in a desperate attempt to convince them to give him the plant
All
of
praises
birth,
to the Most
which
High.
will allow his wife to bear him a son. Some of the most important
The
archaeological evidence
existing
of the
one
story
and the heaven
comes from around 700
spiritual.
BCE
Heaven is
and
spiritual.
was found in the Nineveh Library, built originally by
In
King
the spiritual realm.
Ashurbanipal.
Most High, you know
Ashurbanipal was
what I
a
was trying to
fanatical
say,
record
Father.
keeper and spoke all the Mesopotamian languages. This particular fragment now exists in the British Museum. When compared
Yeah, I
with
want
the
Ralph the
cylinder
Nose to
seals,
get in it.
it
Yes,
becomes
yes,
obvious
yes.
that the much older
My
Babylonian
friend.
story was the forerunner
I'm
of the
looking
Assyrian
forward to
one
this
created
chat.
over 1,000 years later. The myth of Etana parallels many other pieces of legend and
Yes.
folklore from not only the ancient Sumerian culture, but
Kick it with my
also many others
YouTube
all around the
family.
globe.
Way better than my other
It speaks
family.
of gods, wondrous cities, strong rulers, intelligent animals, and a heroic quest. Also,
learned
like
so
other
much,
stories, this one
Father.
appears to serve as an allegory or
Learned so
direct
much.
message to people that
All
feel something
praises to you,
about
Lord.
kings to them. The first Kish dynasty was impressively long, with 23 kings ruling in succession. Most other dynasties that existed way back in those days only lasted for several before falling apart or having their power usurped by another family. It was in these days that the monarchies first started to follow a succession based on male heirs. In other words, a king would pass the crown to his son. This made having a male child so important that any king who did not have a son would be expected to take extreme measures. The myth of Etana demonstrates this clearly. The city of Kish was built before an appropriate ruler was found to control it. It was given considerable protection by the gods, who built a massive wall to guard anyone who lived inside. Inanna selects Etana to be the first king, and he immediately constructs a shrine to honor Adad. In this tale, shrine is overshadowed by a poplar tree. It was quite common for a ruler to build shrines and temples to various gods or goddesses who would bless the city and all who lived there. A snake lives near its roots, and an eagle nests in the topmost branches. These two creatures vowed to remain loyal to each other, stay as friends, and protect whatever offspring they have. Shamash, the sun god, witnesses and verifies this oath. Everything follows along in a wonderful fashion until the eagle goes back on his word as soon as his kin grows up and leaves the nest. He swoops down upon the snake's family and wreaks havoc. Of course, when the snake returns from his daily hunt and his kin are missing and not there to greet him, he spies the eagle's kin are also gone, the nest abandoned, but the distinctive markings of talons in his home amid the poplar roots. The snake immediately knows what happened and becomes extremely angry that his former friend betrayed his trust in such a horrific way. He implores Shamash to take revenge against the eagle. Since this god was a witness to their original agreement, it makes sense that he could also be the one to dole out punishment to the transgressor. The sun god suggests that he sets a trap with the